Hopefully you are doing a good job with soil testing on your farm, and if you are testing for one of the micronutrients called boron. Today we're going to talk a little about boron, how to use it, when to apply it.
All right, Brian, I'm thinking back to when I first got out of college, my first years as a full-time agronomist, and I was so excited. I was taking everything in. I'm talking to guys raising different crops, and there's a guy that I was talking to that raised alfalfa, and he said, you know what, Darren, boron is so important. I have to get boron out for my alfalfa. And I said, what about your corn and your soybeans and your wheat that you're raising? He's like, nope, don't worry about it there. Just worry about it in alfalfa. That's where it's important. And I was thinking, wait a second, how can a nutrient only be important in one crop? And then I think about, well, we hear zinc is important in corn and molybdenum may be important in soybeans and this kind of thing. You know what? It's really getting us off track where we think, yeah, there is just one micro I need to focus on in each crop. That is not the case. Boron is important in all those crops that we mentioned. We need some of that. It is a required nutrient.
Yeah, and if you don't believe that, just look at the Ag PhD fertilizer removal app. Every crop you pull up, there is a requirement for boron on there. You have to have some boron. Now, the good news is you don't need much. The bad news is boron's leachable, kind of like nitrate. So when you think about a crop like corn or wheat, for example, do you ever think, you know what, I don't think I'm going to put any nitrogen on because I'm sure whatever I applied 5 years ago is still there? Of course not. You realize, oh boy, if I want to have a good corn crop or wheat crop or any other crop that needs nitrogen, I have to apply it this year. Same exact thing with boron.
All right, here's a couple of other things about boron that I think have really gotten us off track here. You can call them myths or whatever you would like. One is that, you know, boron, my dad never put it on, so why should I worry about that? Well, there's going to be a lot of things that your dad or your grandpa didn't do on the farm that previous generations didn't do that now we're doing.
Hey, and let's keep in mind, Dad probably had 100 bushels per acre less than you also, so that's a big deal.
Well, it certainly is. The yield enhancement or the boost in yield that we're seeing now is requiring more of various nutrients, and certain ones that were in your soil are getting used up. So we see that with some of the other micronutrients out there too, that, wow, we've been mining this out of the soil for a long time. We finally reached a point where we need to add more. With boron, it's one, as Brian mentioned, you're adding every year. The other thing with boron that has been really doing a disservice to farmers across the country is, well, boron is needed for reproductive stages. We need it for pollination and this kind of thing, so we need it late in the year. While it's true that we do need boron availability late in the season, we also need boron early in the season. Boron is one of those micronutrients. It's a little bit different than the others that is so important in every cell that's being produced all the way through that plant's life. So boron is almost structural. It's not structural like a P and a K would be in your plant, but it is very important. We need boron all the way through the season.
Unfortunately, one of the things you hear about boron is, well, hey, I got to be careful. I maybe don't even want to apply it because I hear it can be toxic to my crop. Well, sure, it can be toxic to your crop. So can anything else if you way overdo it. I can just tell you on our own farm, because we have medium to heavy soils on a lot of it, but we also have some sand. We really haven't had any problem, and we've put several pounds per acre on in a broadcast. Now, yes, if you're going to put some in furrow, you got to be super careful. If you're going to put some 2x2, you have to be somewhat careful. But broadcast, then it's not as big a concern. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there aren't limits with boron, there are. But I am saying, hey, if you broadcast it, you're probably a lot safer. I know you're a lot safer to the seed. And broadcasting with boron is fine because boron is what? It's leachable. It's going to move down through the soil. It's not like phosphorus or zinc where banding really pays. Boron is a lot more like nitrogen where it's going to move in the soil profile. So that's probably the way we would suggest you put it on in most cases.
Broadcasting boron out on the soil is great, but you're going to need some boron in season. And one of the ways that we see farmers putting boron on is to foliar feed. Now, foliar feed is fine. You can only put so much on, as Brian said, or you can run into some issues, but it is safe to use. You can use some foliar. You're just going to have to do it multiple applications if you want to keep spoon feeding that crop along.
Our suggestion for you is soil test. Make sure you're testing for boron also. When you tissue test, make sure you're getting boron results. Track those things as you go along and run some experiments yourself on your farm. Try boosting your boron levels if you're having problems with yield. That very well may be the problem on your farm.
Now, one other thing that can be a problem from time to time is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?